Some very strange things have been happening to the media in Kenya, to members of the fourth estate, that I want us to take a deeper look at today so that we understand better. Because there seems to be a connection with recent publicized events involving the media. It would seem on the surface of things somebody wants to send a message to the media. And maybe the means of doing this are limited because of a very annoying nuisance for those who want to get up to mischief. A very annoying nuisance called our 2010 Constitution. Our cops saying, hii kitu inafanya kazi yetu ngumu sana. Is that what they are saying behind the scenes? I'm just asking. I'm not saying. Please get me clear. I'm just asking. Because actions always speak much louder. Actions scream, rather than mere words, which mean nothing. Talk is cheap. Action is what tells us everything. But first, allow me to go back to yesterday's protests, which erupted in many parts of the country. Indeed, I believe it is correct English to say, in most parts of the country called Kenya. And let us call these protests by their real name. It's not me who's giving them the name. The protesters, what are they saying? These are anti-Ruto protests. These are Ruto must go protests in most of the country. That is the truth. Now, on the eve of these protests, I had a very interesting discussion with somebody who told me that the government is going to be very careful, especially in view of the attention the protests are getting and the government's reaction to it from the international community via international media. They're always reporting about arbitrary arrests, disappearances, deaths, mistreatment being common in the country called Kenya. And so my friend's prediction was that the police are going to be very careful. They're going to handle protesters with kid gloves. I told my friend, no, nothing like that will happen. You don't know these people. Okay, those were my exact words. And they promptly responded, Kumekucha, you have read this one wrong. You're wrong. Let us wait and see what happens. I believe I am correct. That is what they said. Well, we all know what happened. Same old. A subtle change in tactics, but the treatment to protesters, Kenyan protesters, was the same. And so, maybe I know something that this person I was arguing with does not know. And hopefully, I hope to reveal it on my show today. Very disturbing. Why are the police, if they are really all the police, why are they using live ammunition on protesters? Why? What could the reason be? Who does it help? Think about it. You would do something because it will help this regime. Now, it should be very clear that this police brutality does not help Ruto remain in power. If anything, it speeds up his exit. Why can't people see that? I thought it is so obvious. Too obvious. Hey. Anyway, my hope is that we'll be able to shed some light into that very deep mystery. Because we're assuming here that people are using those wonderful gadgets the Ancient of Days blessed them with, that are between the ears, called the brain. That is the assumption. But alas, assumptions are always just assumptions. In Nakuru, there is something which happened which may be linked to the very dramatic events of this morning, July 17th, 2024. Okay? Yesterday what happened is that a Kameme journalist by the name of Catherine Wanjeri Kariuki alipigwa risasi mara tatu on the leg. And of course my immediate question is, why 3 times? Why not just once? Why 3 times? Because that would suggest that there was some passion, some feelings, behind whoever pulled the trigger 3 times and hit a target 3 times. And then in the early hours of this morning, a journalist I know, in fact he was one of my mentors very early in my career. I went to him for advice when he was working at the Weekly Review. And I was just straight out of school, starting my journalism career. The journalist Macharia Gaitho was involved in a dramatic, harrowing experience that I'm afraid is just way too common in Kenya these days. A group of people approach you and they abduct you. And usually they use a lot of force and they're brutal. Same script was used this morning on veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho. According to him, he was leaving his home with his 18-year-old son Andrew when they noticed that 2 vehicles were following them. And so they quickly drove to Karen police station to seek refuge. Unfortunately, they got there before the 2 vehicles got to them. And then very suddenly, while they were within the compound of the Karen police station, a secure place where Kenyans should feel safe, at least law-abiding Kenyans, the 2 vehicles drove fast up to where they were. And some men who looked like goons emerged and grabbed Gaitho. Now, it goes without saying that Bwana Gaitho is not only a very well-trained journalist, but is also a seasoned journalist. He understands the law. And so he resisted. And they asked him, why are you resisting arrest? He told them he was resisting arrest from thugs because the men had not yet identified themselves as police officers. In fact, they never identified themselves as police officers. Indeed, at one juncture, they told Gaitho in response that he must know that they are cops. Why? Because they are driving Subarus and they have guns. Hey, hii Kenya yetu. And Gaitho pointed out to them that anybody can drive a Subaru in Kenya. It is not illegal to own and drive a Subaru in Kenya. And as far as guns are concerned, thugs have them. So how do you identify yourself as a police officer in that way? Now his son captured the whole drama. And at one point, the driver of the vehicle where he was being bundled into came out of the vehicle to help push Gaitho inside. And he used his foot. Can you imagine that? He used his foot and he kicked hard and pushed hard at the veteran journalist. Innocent. And they drove off. And all the time they were communicating with their boss. And at some point it was realized that they had the wrong person. The person they had grabbed was Francis Macharia Gaitho. The person they were looking for was controversial Twitter blogger Francis Gaitho. Francis Macharia Gaitho, Francis Gaitho. And so there is a similarity in the names. But hold on a minute. Francis Gaitho is young, is about half the age of veteran Macharia Gaitho. Number two, they don't resemble. Now, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations is supposed to be the top-notch investigating agency we have in the country called Kenya. These people are supposed to be professionals. Hey. And so, how do they mistake the identities of two people who are very different? One is much older, one looks different. How does that happen? You know, the usual procedure in these matters is that you would have a file somewhere with information on your person of interest. And so you can imagine these people have a whole file of the wrong person. How do you investigate successfully in that particular instance? You tell me. And by the way, see, this is the same DCI that not too long ago posted photographs from the internet of protests in other parts of Africa and announced to us all that those individuals from West African countries, I don't know from where, the DCI was looking for them. Of course, they later came out and apologized. What? What is happening here? Do we have a DCI that is now becoming a laughing stock? And yet they're involved in very, very serious things? People who are armed and clearly they don't seem to know what they're doing? Is that what we have here? Anyway, the DCI boss came out very quickly and issued a statement telling Kenyans that it was a case of mistaken identity. And I can guess why he was very quick. You see, just a few hours earlier, the previous day, Catherine Wanjeri Karaoke of Kameme FM was hit 3 times by a police risasi on the leg. And then just a handful of hours later the next day, somebody uses his boot to assault and push into a vehicle Macharia Gaitho, a respected veteran journalist. The DCI boss and others were afraid that it would emerge that somebody is fighting the media in Kenya, that somebody is targeting the media in Kenya. Now, I want us to step back for a minute, because it is very easy for me to get emotional here. I know Gaitho. I know he loves his country. I know he has served his country very well in his profession for decades. So it's very easy for me to get emotional. So let me avoid that and let us step back and look at this bila my feelings. Now, is there anywhere in our laws or our constitution where it says abductions are allowed? They're legal for everybody else, but they are allowed for police officers. Is there anywhere, maybe I missed something, where it says that? I don't think so. I remember during the fight for the second liberation of Kenya, my political lecturer used to repeat many times what an arrest is, especially when Dictator Moi started getting very, very naughty, and stepping outside the law, even in those days, before our current beautiful constitution. It is very legal for a plainclothes police officer to arrest somebody, but they must identify themselves. Preferably, they should show the person they're arresting the official credentials, proof that they're police officers. In Bwana Gaitho's case, the mysterious gentlemen did not introduce themselves as police officers, and neither did they show any proof that they are in fact police officers. And even their behavior is not the behavior of a police officer, because a police officer is trained even on how to arrest somebody resisting arrest. But these goons, 4 of them, were having trouble with one old man. Even if Bwana Gaitho was very strong, 2 trained police officers would have quickly gotten the situation under control, assuming that Gaitho was a violent criminal resisting arrest. Just 2 officers would have quickly gotten the job done. But here were 3 or 4 very well-built men struggling with an old man, and they needed the help of their colleague the driver, who came out with his boot and kicked and shoved Gaitho inside the vehicle with his boot. Something else very important. These men had hidden their faces. These men were hooded. They were hiding their identity. They were hiding their faces. Bottom line, this was not an arrest, it was an abduction. And an abduction is against the law, even for police officers. I believe the law is very clear here. Yeah, you either arrest or you abduct. If it was an arrest, it is legal. It is well within the rights of a police officer. However, if it was an abduction, it was illegal. It doesn't matter who did it. Even the IG of police or even the director of DCI, it doesn't matter. It was against the law. The law was broken. But that is not all. Why would a police officer hide their face when arresting somebody or in any other operation? Well, one obvious reason would be because they're about to do illegal things on that person they're arresting, and therefore they don't want it to come back to them in case somebody identifies them and testifies in a court of law against them later, after the fact. And so, bila kizungu mingi, a police officer being hooded is very, very criminal. It is nowhere near the law. And therefore what has been going on in Kenya, what the police have been doing, is illegal. There is no other language, there is no other term that we can use. And of course this whole incident was very traumatizing, not only for Bwana Macharia Gaitho, but also for his 18-year-old son, who saw his father being mistreated so much, only for the DCI to come out later and say, oops, sorry, we made a mistake, mistaken identity. Which brings us to the horrifying thought that maybe in the past the same thing must have happened to other innocent Kenyans who went through a lot of suffering, and maybe even walimalizwa na wakarushwa mali fulani, and then later the detectives discover, oops, mistaken identity, that was the wrong guy. Let us now go and look for the right guy. And meanwhile, you can't bring that dead person back to life. Oops. Oops. What? Where have we reached as a country? And where are we going? Hey, I am Bila Words. Now I take this opportunity once again to thank all of you who have participated and are participating in this season to gift yours truly, Kumekucha Chris. You can see details on your screens right now. I am so grateful, and I'm also so grateful in advance to those of you who are still on the way. Almighty God bless you mightily as you continue to sponsor this work I'm doing for the motherland, this labor of love have stuck with for about 20 years now. Asanteni sana. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.